Welcome back, everyone, to the Quantum Connection podcast and the Enlightened Mood YouTube channel. We have a stellar guest with us today, I must say, one of my very favorites, the legendary Carrie Bennett, who is, in my opinion, I know she's going to get embarrassed, a pioneer in the quantum biology field and has fulfilled, or her mission is to bring the information to us in a digestible, understandable way. And to me, that's everything. Because if we can't access and understand information that's going to be pivotal and transformational in our health, then it's for naught, right? There's no use in having this information hanging out in the journals and whatnot. So Carrie is here with us today, and she's going to share with us all of the information that she synthesized and bring it to us in a way that's easy to understand and help you in your health journey. So thank you so much, Carrie, for being with us today.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Vanessa. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We're really excited. I have learned an immense amount of knowledge from you on just how to really up-level my health and how to implement simple strategies that have made a really big impact on me. And then I also can delve into your posts and learn the science too, but I also learn the simple and the science, which is, I love that combination of how you have a flow of delivering what's the practical application of what to do. And then here's a little bit of science to teach you about why this is important. And I found that to be a really great, delivery method for me to learn this information and then use this information and share it with clients and people that I love. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's super cool to hear, Vanessa, because my nerd brain has to sneak in a little bit of science, right? Because I just love it so much. It's so interesting. But yeah, the practical application really is what matters to most people.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
So on that note, let's start off with the quantum biology basics, right? Like light, water, magnetism. How would you frame it? Like, why is this even important? Why should people start to think of their health in terms of light and water versus like food and supplements and just only exercise? Like, how do you present that?
Yeah, that's a great way to get into this topic and this talk. And number one, I would say 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, it wouldn't have mattered, right? We wouldn't be having these conversations because we would be living in natural light all the time. We would be in contact with nature all the time. We would be in contact with the seasons all the time. We would have spring water, hopefully, right? Spring access to spring water to be able to drink that's beautifully structured. And now, while our civilization is quote unquote evolved because we're like in this tech world now, it's also allowed us to disconnect so drastically from the cycles of nature. And these are things that our human species has evolved to just recognize. And now we know the science behind why it's so important to stay in touch with the day-night cycles of our local environment. It's called our circadian rhythm. And so I would say that before I ever want to address someone's exercise routine or even their quote unquote diet, I want to make sure that they're laying a firm foundation of what the body needs for health. And I personally, in my own healing journey, I know so many other of my, lots and lots of clients, right, who have also found this to be true as well, is that if we can put our body in the correct light signaling pathways, that sets the stage for so much healing. If we can give the body access to clean, structured water, if we learn how to maybe even imprint that water with our own frequency, very much like a self-homeopathy, if you will, again, it brings so much value to the body. If we learn how to connect to nature more, there are so many healing frequencies in nature. That the body actually, again, we know the frequency of the earth, the Schumann resonance. We know the frequencies of the light that's coming there, the magnetism. We're just not a part of it anymore because we're indoors, we're disconnected. And so I say to myself, especially because I went the reverse route, right? I went exercise correctly, followed by nutrition and elimination diets and gut health protocols and all the supplements, right? And it just didn't move the needle. And so when I found light and Dr. Jack Kruse and him telling me that my light mattered, it was just like, no pun intended, because it was a light bulb moment, but I should call it a sunlight moment, right? An illumination, if you will. And because as I started to implement that, it was like, okay, yeah, this is something I never thought of, but wow, I actually think in a very short amount of time, I'm feeling a difference. I'm like, is this placebo effect? And I just kept implementing it. And then I started implementing it with clients. And I'm like, nope, this is not placebo effect. This is real. And so sunlight for me and light signaling is the foundation that we lay when it comes to supporting our health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that because I have that same story of trying all the diets, all the restrictive diets, all the supplement protocols, exercise, all the things. and just never feeling any better. And then still dealing with lots of symptoms and chronic insomnia. And then I was like, sunrise, okay, yeah, okay. And then that like made this huge difference, not only in my sleep, but in my pain levels, which was kind of cool too. So just really, really amazing. Sunlight is just such a beautiful, beautiful healing modality. So yeah.
It is. And I think most of us take for granted, because I think we're taught two things about sunlight. Get a little of it on your skin to make vitamin D, and then supplement the rest of your vitamin D needs. And number two, cover your eyes and your skin at that point, because you're going to get skin cancer.
Mhm.
And it's just the most incomplete understanding of natural light that I could ever imagine. And so nowadays we're very much taught to fear the sun. Oh yeah, vitamin D matters, but you can supplement that. So still, when you're in the sun, cover up and cover your eyes. And so very few people are truly reaping the benefits of natural light and the signaling that happens because of this kind of fear-based mindset. And it's sad, because sunlight is so robust. I call it a nutrient, right? And it's not just one nutrient. You could almost picture every wavelength of every color of the light that we would see in a rainbow, right? All of those are made up of different wavelengths, different energies. And then even the stuff that we can't see in the infrared and the ultraviolet spectrum, that is like a full spectrum nourishment that the body needs for so many reasons. And we're just not getting it on a regular basis. But it would be like, hey, I wouldn't expect to put a plant in the house and throw a garbage bag over it and expect it to thrive in any capacity, because it needs light. Humans are the exact same, right? We absolutely need the light. And it's just something that we've ignored so much. And we've, I think, driven a lot of fear around it because of how I think modern humans misuse sunlight,
Right.
as opposed to the sunlight being inherently destructive for us.
I'm just reading the UV Advantage. I just bought that book, and it was just talking about like the beginning stages of that a little bit. And it was talking about how, the cancers that sunlight can prevent, pancreatic, ovarian, uterine, breast cancer, all the ones that are on the hormonal sphere, right? That are really, if you miss sunlight, you're going to, have like a high percentage of fatality with those cancers, unfortunately. And then not that sunlight causes cancer, because I don't believe that in any way, but like the risk is very minimal to like a basal cell or carcinoma is like a 4% fatality. It's like we have to outweigh the risks versus the benefits here a little bit. And I think being inside, I would rather deal with a basal cell than deal with, bladder cancer or ovarian cancer any day. So like,
Yeah.
we have to take that into consideration too. So
Absolutely. That's a beautiful point. And the other thing about that a lot of the research is showing is that, guess what? It's not just the ultraviolet range of light that can ultimately be mutagenic, right? Can damage the DNA. High intensity blue light can also do that. And so we're saying, oh, being indoors under all this, away from the sun, I'm safe. But one of the fastest growing populations for skin cancer and all sorts of cancers, right, is those of us who live indoors and work underneath artificial light all the time. And so it's like we have and like I said, we have had a very incomplete picture. And I'm just like you, Vanessa. I feel so good in the sun. I feel so much healthier and more robust, and have so much more vitality now that I'm engaging in sunlight practices. That I've been doing it for now. Well, I mean, almost a decade, right? Because my health challenges came on with my first son, and now he's 12 and a half. Holy cow. So over a decade now. And it's just something that I wish people knew. They could learn how to adapt their skin to receive the sun and not get burned, and then get all of these other additional benefits that we're talking about.
yes,
Yep.
yes. Go ahead, Heather. Go ahead, go.
Well, I was just going to say, like, your health journey, Vanessa, mine too, is that the only thing that actually brought about resolution for my chronic fatigue, where I literally was having to conserve all my energy to serve my clients, and then outside of that, I felt like I didn't have much energy for anything, is being able to get out in the sun every day consistently. And that changed everything for me. So I did all the other things, the diet and the exercise, and that actually made me worse. So it's totally a game changer, the sun. And I think it's really interesting how much we've maligned it, and that people it's like I see so many people in California with sunglasses on when it's not even that bright out. And I'm thinking, wow, how did we get to this place of thinking that the sun is so damaging? Whereas, like you're saying, Carrie, if we know how to use it wisely and start to partner with it and build up the tolerance and the solar callus and whatnot, and that's when I'm out in strong UV light, especially UVB, my histamine issues just like vanish. So there's something that happens there that's so healing for my body that it really needs. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and that's something that I've seen many times is like at first, typically with histamine, we fear the sun because there is a bit of a transition for some people where it starts to maybe feel the sun feels uncomfortable, right? Itching, redness, pain. But then after you've basically, like you said, built an adaptation to the sun, the body's just like, oh yes, and soaks it in, and then the histamine resolves itself. But it is getting to that point where you're like, okay, this is uncomfortable a little bit, but you slowly build it up, and then all of a sudden your body gets the energy it needs to clear the excess histamine that's in your system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of histamine intolerance sometimes as a light deficiency a little bit, and not that,
100%. Yeah.
that's not the only thing, but like
No,
I
no.
used to be literally pale as a ghost. I mean, I never had a tan, like literally. Now I tan beautifully, but every time I used to go in the sun before I knew how to use it wisely and appropriately, I would always burn. And I'd be like, and then it would take like a few, and my dermatologist used to say, oh, that's like a normal thing. I'm like, no, it's actually not now. I know it's not a normal thing, but like, yeah, I used to burn like a bunch of times until I got used to it, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely a light deficiency, partly for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think this would be a great time to just talk to people about like, how is the sun nourishing us, beyond the vitamin D? Okay. So it's like, yes. And then they're like, okay, all of you are feeling really good, right? Because you're in the sun, but like, let's really I'd love to get, me, I'd love to get specific, right? Can we
Please
get
do.
specific?
Yes.
Go
Um,
for it.
and so first and foremost, we have this thing called our circadian rhythm or our daily rhythm that the body has synced up to. Every creature syncs up to the sunlight. So it has tasks that it wants to upregulate or increase when the light is present versus tasks that it wants to turn on when it's dark, like when we're sleeping and resting. And so picture, it's the exact reason why a sun will at sunrise, or I'm sorry, a flower at sunrise will kind of look like this. All of a sudden, as the sun comes up, it uses the energy. This takes energy, right, for a plant to lift up its stem and then open its petals, and then it actually follows the sun's trajectory. That takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. And then the sun, as soon as that sunlight is not intense enough for the sun to receive the energy from it, it, kind of wilts back down at night. And so that's a circadian rhythm of a flower. It happens all the time. We've all seen this. And same thing, there's a reason why there's certain species that are called nocturnal because they have an opposite rhythm. They thrive in darkness and they rest during the day. And so as soon as they perceive adequate darkness, which is hard these days because there's not enough darkness on this planet, but as soon as they perceive enough darkness, they come out to play. And so we're the same way. We need the correct signaling. And in fact, we know so much about our circadian rhythm that we can pinpoint every hour of the day kind of different pathways that are getting initiated or turned on or what's being optimized when we have the correct light signaling. So for example, at sunrise, that's when the sun crosses the horizon. And no, you don't have to see the sun cross the horizon, right? Like it's a common question. In order to get these effects, of any of these effects, you just have to be outside. And so with naked eyes, no sunglasses, no glasses, no contacts, right? And so go outside at sunrise because when that sun crosses the horizon, the blue light of the sun intensifies enough to start the clock in our brain. We've got this master clock in our brain that keeps time for all of our cells. Because if you think about it, we've got a ton of tasks happening in every single cell. There has to be some overarching coordinators. I call it like the air traffic controller of our body. It's basically telling the cells, okay, hey, you cells and you organs, okay, now the day has started. Let's kickstart these pathways. And that's exactly what happens. Light enters our eyes, that blue light enters the eyes. There's a kind of a sensor in the back of the eye. It's called the melanopsin receptor that captures those blue photons of light and communicates it to this clock in the brain. This clock in the brain says, okay, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, go. We start to make cortisol. Hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid axis, go. We start to stimulate metabolism. Hypothalamus, pituitary, gonadal axis. Axes, let's go, right? And so reproductive function gets optimized. Hypothalamus, pituitary, pancreas gets started then. That's to kickstart our digestive processes. And so all of this is because the brain is now recognizing that the day has begun. And
so that's why all those pathways
light.
are connected to the hypothalamus because that's where the master clock is.
Exactly. That's where the master clock is. And that's where the direct signaling is from the eye at light entering the eyes to that hypothalamus. And that master clock to the hypothalamus, it's all connected. And so That's it, right? That's a very key thing to have happen every morning. I want to increase cortisol in the morning to have energy. That's an important surge to have. I want my digestive function to be primed. I want my reproductive hormones to be balanced. I want, I want my thyroid metabolism to be activated and ready to go and to meet all my metabolic demands for the day.
And what for the brain, for the thinking, it's cortisol, what is it?
Totally. The cortisol and even the thyroid, right? The thyroid really controls the mitochondria and vice versa. They talk a lot back and forth. And so the mitochondria are like, we need more energy, right? We're thinking now, or the muscles, now we're moving, or the heart's like, now we're beating more. And so there's this communication. And then the thyroid says, oh, okay, we'll turn you on a little bit more. Or okay, now the day is ending. We'll start to pull back a little bit on that energy flow. And it's all this beautiful, very well coordinated symphony that's happening. And I myself missed out on that symphony for approximately 30 something years of my life, right? Because I never thought that this was important. At least I missed out on it very consistently. I can't remember a sunrise I would see unless I was, maybe at my cottage or something. And so, it was, and so that was why I think my body responded so well to starting to go outside at sunrise when I was on my health journey, because my brain was finally like, oh, it's the start of the day. I know what to do. And all those pathways started to flow and get synced. And guess what I was experiencing? Digestive issues. Guess what improved? My digestive issues. Insomnia. Guess what improved? My sleep, because my brain finally knew start of the day versus end of the day. Guess what improved? My energy. My cortisol used to be flatlined in the morning. I tested through supplements added, adaptogens, you name it. And it was just like, I was that person who could fall asleep in the movie theater. I'm sorry, I felt like I was in a movie theater watching a boring movie all the time. And I was a personal trainer, right? Like I was teaching kickboxing and boot camp and stuff. And I was just like, I want a nap. Like, in the back of my brain, I was just like, yeah, keep your eyes open. And then it was just like, gosh, all of these things became regulated simply because I gave my eyes and my brain the correct light signaling.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much processes in our body are controlled by light. We don't have any clue. No doctor's ever going to tell you this, ever, unfortunately. And, listen, I have Hashimoto's. I've been to several endocrinologists. Not one told me to get out in UVA light and sunrise light to fix my Hashimoto's. Not one. And it's just not going to happen. So yeah, but we all, I wanted to touch on two things. It's like, we think of blue light and cortisol as bad. And they're not. They're actually really important for us. We just need them at the right time and the right signals. And sunlight is going to be the thing that's going to provide it for us at the right time. So yeah, so important. So yeah.
That's exactly correct. Those are another things that get a bad reputation. So sunlight itself has a bad reputation, and then so does cortisol. So does blue light. The only reason blue light it should have a bad reputation is when it's isolated, when it's not part of the solar spectrum, the sunlight, when it's just from screens and bulbs. Yeah, that in and of itself right there can be very confusing and drive a lot of chaotic signaling in the brain and the body. But blue light from the sun tells time, because as that sun gets higher, right, the amount and intensity of blue light that is being perceived by these sensors and the clock in my brain, it gradually increases until the sun's at the high point of the sky. And then it gradually decreases until after sunset. It is the perfect wavelength that these sensors keyed in on to tell time for literally since human beings have needed to tell time, right, in their brain. And so it's this ever-changing amount and intensity of blue light. And unfortunately, that is the wavelength range of light that bulbs, light bulb companies, LED screen companies have decided to key in on, because it does provide a very bright and intense light source, and it has been shown to enhance productivity in office workers.
Oh my God.
Right?
Makes
because
sense, though. Stimulating cortisol. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. But not the right kind of stimulating. It's very, very much an artificial cortisol surge all day long. And so that's what we're dealing with now. That's why that blue light becomes so confusing to my brain, because from a screen, it never changes. It's the same dang wavelength, and it doesn't contain the rest of the solar spectrum, the rest of the sun's colors. And so it creates a very confusing, it's almost like I'm in the twilight zone. I don't know. Thankfully, I got out of a gym environment, right? I used to be in that kind of twilight zone environment for quite some time. But so I've been in these places where I'm in a room and there's very little natural light under either LEDs or fluorescent bulbs. And it starts to kind of feel like, ugh,
I
like,
can't do it anymore. I just feel
No.
super uncomfortable and I get anxious and irritable. And it's not just because of the knowing. I probably always had that experience and didn't understand what was going on, right? That
same.
I just don't feel right. And now I know why it is. So I'm always heavily armed when I go in with my blue blockers or
Oh,
anywhere
me
that
too.
has artificial light.
Yeah.
These are just
Yeah.
really,
And
these are, I can't get these clean. That's why I don't have them on right now. But
I
so,
know.
so we have the morning processes that we're completely missing out on. And I guess our body's just trying to limp along, doing the best it can and sort of half-assing it, if you will. It's like, okay, well, I guess we'll do some of this and I don't know what we're doing. And then at night, it's a whole nother shit show. Sorry for my language, but
It
right,
is.
Carrie?
It is. It is correct. It's a correct way to call it because it's very chaotic, right? It's so then what happens at night as that sun crosses the horizon, if I was just sitting outside enjoying sunset time, the sun crosses the horizon, these sensors in my eyes are no longer picking up the blue. Even if there is blue, a little bit of blue in my environment, it's not intense enough to trigger these sensors, these melanopsin receptors. And so my brain has found out that, okay, the day has ended. Now it's anticipating a period of rest because after every amount of daylight, there was always a period of rest. And so with that, then my brain starts to say, oh, okay, let's start thinking about making melatonin. Let's start making sure estrogen and cortisol and all these other hormones are kind of lowered because this is not the time to optimize those things. This is the time to optimize repair. So it's going to start to want to increase melatonin and human growth hormone and other key hormones that we release and chemicals that we release at night for sleep and repair. But what happens, right? The typical thing that we do, guilty as charged, because I did it for very, very long, was we go home and we're like, oh, it's getting dark in here. And we flip on every light in the house, right? And then, like, to wind down, we watch TV, back in, right?
On the computer,
Or the computer or scrolling on the
tablet.
phone. Yeah, there's so many options these days. There's lots of ways to experience that blue light at night. And so, yeah, and so that's what we're doing. And so when all of a sudden the brain is anticipating the day is over and it sees that surge of blue, that surge of blue light mimics what my body would be experiencing around early, like afternoon time, right? Sometime in the middle of the day. And so then my brain goes, uh-oh, I thought the day was ending, but clearly there's a lot of the blue light in this environment still. And it surges cortisol. It surges all those reproductive hormones. It starts those pathways off again. And so what are the ramifications of that? Well, number one, if cortisol is surging, melatonin is tanking. So I'm not likely to go to sleep. That can drive insomnia, or a very classical thing I hear is I get my second wind, right? There's no such thing as a second wind when you have blue blockers on.
Right, exactly.
Right. So it's like
not possible. You have to go to bed.
I know. It's like, okay. I was like, I want to kind of stay up, but I'm not. And so then you get this second wind, and there's like this idea of added energy. Like my body's now revved up again because I think it's the start of a new day. I get this surge of reproductive hormones, which is unfortunately driving a lot of the reproductive cancers, the surge in those cancers that we're seeing right now, from breast to prostate, ovarian, uterine. I get with blue light, especially unopposed blue light, because cortisol's job is to help me have adequate blood sugar, little blood sugar raise in the morning. That's again to kind of allow my pathways to be primed to have that glucose energy. And that's what happens at night. I literally elevate my blood glucose doesn't matter if I'm eating or not, right? And so that's why we're seeing with shift work and just with like nighttime light exposure, we're seeing metabolic disease increasing, obesity, diabetes.
What about non-alcoholic fatty liver? Is that also?
Yeah, NAFLD is huge. And I think that is I'm seeing it in like children.
Oh God, really?
I know, crazy. Right? And it's not necessarily. I mean, it's not necessarily. I can't blame it all on what these children are eating. A lot of it has to do with screen use, for sure. And so then, I mean, that's not a way to thrive, right? So now I don't want to sleep. My hormones are imbalanced. My blood sugar is dysregulated. I'm not going to make melatonin, which repairs my body at night. I'm not going to make the other repair hormones, at least not until really late, much, much later than I should be. And so then instead of getting that melatonin surge, let's say during this time of year, this is being recorded in the winter, that melatonin surge should really be starting maybe around 8 o'clock, right? Really increase 8 o'clock till midnight, 1 a.m. That melatonin surge is going to get pushed back because my pineal gland will not make melatonin until it senses darkness.
Wow.
And so if it doesn't sense darkness, that melatonin gets shifted back and back. So then what happens is I'm not repairing, I'm probably not dreaming, my sleep cycles are off, but my alarm goes off in the morning and I feel so groggy. I can't get out of bed because my melatonin is actually still very, very elevated from the night before because its release got pushed so far into the sleep phase. And so I've tested melatonins and many times and I've seen it the most elevated without supplementation at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning.
That's when cortisol should be starting to
And that's when cortisol should be surging, right? And so then we feel like garbage. We don't even think about going outside. You know, if we can sleep in, we'll sleep in. Otherwise, we kind of maybe struggle our way to work. Usually wearing sunglasses, right? You know, on our drive or something like that. And then we're in this office environment that provides none of the signaling that we need to optimize it. And this is, I mean, I wish this was uncommon, but this is a very, very,
that's the norm.
It's the norm.
And that's what sets the stage though for chronic illness and disease. So that's what we're looking at here. So, and I hope I think there's a tide, or the tide is starting to turn, or however we say that, people are starting to be more interested in light and all the blue blockers and stuff. So, but the more that you get this message out there, Carrie, and then there's this, the effect of it, it just ripples out.
It does.
Thank God, because people are going to start to see, oh, I have so much power. I have so much agency that I can take control over my health and make these not that hard changes so that my body can work on its own behalf to balance itself out and function as it should, right? And this thing, when you say about sleeping in, it's so funny because I used to do that all the time. Like easily. Now it's like, I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll cheat one day and it'll be a luxury and I'll just sleep in if I'm more tired than, I should be. But I'm like, I never sleep in because I can't.
I know. Naturally your brain's like, oh, I'm anticipating the sunrise. So wake up.
My body's like, no, we're going to get up and go outside.
I'm doing some group coaching and a woman was like, do you have an alarm? How do you wake up? I'm like, I don't need an alarm clock anymore. Like you just naturally wake up. It's just, it's kind of funny. If you just align yourself, naturally you're up at that time. I'm up about 6 a.m. every morning, and it shifts earlier in the summertime too. So
totally.
That's what should happen. Like your body should just be aligned to that. And it's so funny. I want to share, when I was doing the carnivore diet years ago, I would check my blood sugar all the time. And I'm like, why the hell is it so high at night? And now it's like, it was the light, like that's what it was. Like, that's so obvious. So to me, like I try to tell people, like, if you just wear your blue blockers at night, you are going to prevent hormonal cancers. Like it helps you prevent cancer. Like just think of it that way. Don't care about what you look like. Don't care about that you're different. Like this is more important. Like your health is so much more important. And one day I hope it'll be the norm. Like I actually saw somebody with blue blockers on, the orange blue blockers. And I was shocked. It was actually at my son's eye doctor, and I go to pick up his glasses and the guy has orange blue blockers. I'm like, I gotta ask him. Like, what is going on? Like, how does he know? Does he know about the sun? Does he know? Like, he doesn't, but that's okay. But he's wearing orange blue blockers for headaches that he used to get from looking at the computers too often. And it worked. It like totally cured that. I'm like, I'll just give you a tip. I'm like, every once in a while, take those off and go outside.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll be like, how's your energy? Your headaches are gone, but how's your energy? Are you tired all day long?
Yeah. Cause it's orange all day. So I was kind of
orange all day. Right. Yeah. That's the thing.
Not good either. You're going to be too tired during the day.
Right. Yeah. Orange before sunrise, after sunset. The rest of the day, like I like my yellows. I feel so soothing my brain feels so soothing when I've got my yellows on. I can't have my windows open the majority of the year. Well, I can't anymore now that we get critters, right? You probably heard that story. Did you hear that? Like all of a sudden, like this is a window well, right? And like a big one. And all of a sudden, like I would have these windows open and all of a sudden I'd be like, that's a baby bunny, or like, that's like, my husband was like, do not open that window anymore. Like, okay.
That's so
It's
funny.
never happened to me. I often do a crack, but I get in trouble still. Like he's like, you're letting all the heat out. I'm like, I know, but I want some, at least it's the modern glass. I'm like, can we change the glass?
I know, right? If I had quartz crystal here, it'd be perfect.
Oh, somebody needs to start making that. But we got to
I
get to water, Carrie. I don't want to run out of time
I
before we get
know,
to
gosh,
ether.
let's talk all day. Let's talk all day. Can this be like a 7-hour podcast?
I know.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So water, right? So why is water part of the whole quantum biology, I guess, triangle, if you will, of light, water, and magnetism? Water is special in so many ways beyond my wildest dreams.
Goosebumps here.
I mean, my understanding, and I'm wondering what the two of you thought with water. I think with water, having gone through training as well, would be like, I always assumed that when I heard that the majority of the body was water, right? 70% water, my assumption was it was just that liquid water in a glass, right? It just was kind of there. It was maybe cushion, or it kind of allowed things to swim and molecules to swim and move around, but that it actually didn't serve any very functional or necessary purpose inside of the body. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think understanding water in the body and understanding how water interacts with light, and then maybe how water interacts with ether, if we'll have time to go there. I was like, absolutely, we're getting there. It's so empowering in so many ways, because it really simplifies health, in my opinion. And so I think we've made some really wrong assumptions, the general right? That we've made some really wrong assumptions that the only way that the human body gets energy is through food. Because the classical thing that we hear, that I was taught in all of my undergrad and grad and high school, and all my learning, was that we eat food, the food ultimately becomes electrons, and the mitochondria turns that into ATP, right? And that ATP is the energy currency of the cell. And that is actually wrong. And it's been disproven many times, but it's been ignored. Because when something that was so foundational, that was considered law, right? Like ATP is the energy currency of the cell. When people are presented with information to the contrary, it's so much easier just to ignore that. But I'm here to tell you, ATP is important. It absolutely is, but it is not the energy currency of the cell. Before I get into water on that one, I also want to say that it's very common knowledge. Like you'll talk to any conventional medical practitioner, and they will say that the cell needs the appropriate pH or voltage, right? There's a membrane voltage, there's an intracellular voltage. And the assumption was also that this voltage was maintained because you have these little pumps on the outside of the cell that are just very actively pumping in potassium, pumping out sodium, pumping in magnesium. They're very actively moving what are called charged ions, or minerals that have a charge to them. And so technically the interior of the cell should be negatively charged, approximately negative 20 to 25 millivolts. That corresponds to a pH of about 7.34, 7.35, 7.45, somewhere in there. So it's an alkaline, it's a negatively charged environment. And so it was easy to assume that there was the existence of these little channels, and that we were pumping these ions in or pumping other ions out to maintain healthy charge balance. The same guy who disproved, Gilbert Ling, who disproved the fact that ATP was not the energy currency of the cell, also happened to prove something else that was very inconvenient. And it was that we would need orders of magnitude more ATP to run these sodium potassium pumps than could ever be possibly made by the cell. So another mechanism had to be at play. But the sodium potassium hypothesis is so ingrained in everything. And in fact, I was taking an interesting course, Heather, so I was taking a course with Tom Cowan, and he actually highlighted some research where the research has invented pumps for non-biological things. They're like, oh yeah, there must be it was like some aspirin, it was like some pump for like, an acetaminophen style chemical. He's like, oh yeah. And he was like, yeah, and apparently the human body anticipated that at some point someone would create this chemical. And thankfully, we have this membrane channel or this pump that can move it in. It's like, it's gotten so weird in the research. And so what I love about understanding water is that it simplifies this in a it's Occam's razor, right? It very much simplifies things in such a beautiful way. And so this water, first off, this water comes from the mitochondria. So mitochondria, yes, they make ATP, but it's largely been ignored that the fourth step of the mitochondrial electron transport chain, it produces water. Right. And it doesn't just produce any water. It produces what's called deuterium depleted water. That's like liquid gold. It's like the best water, metabolic water that we could possibly have. And so the mitochondria are making tons of water. And the reason why this water is so vital is because as soon as this water comes into contact with a biological surface, which could be a protein, membrane, the nucleus, the DNA, molecules that are in the cell, all of these are biological surfaces. Anytime that water comes into contact with these biological surfaces, it structures itself in a very different way than normal liquid water. And so when you would see normal liquid water in a glass, those H2O molecules, I go like this, picture like the oxygen at the top and the hydrogens at the bottom, right? These H2O molecules, this one's going to go ahead and bind over here, and then it's going to shift over here. It's going to kind of randomly bounce around, and it's not going to have any order or organization or structure. Whereas when water goes next to a biological surface, it spontaneously takes on order and structure. And one of the hypotheses that it takes on is these hexagonal rings, where the H's and the O's are linked as like linked honeycombs, hexagonal honeycomb linkages. And this ordered water forms next to these biological surfaces and extends away from these biological surfaces. And guess what? Because of that linkage, how the water organizes itself, it actually gives charge to the water. That water has a negative charge. Dr. Pollack has proven that. It's called exclusion zone water, easy water for short. And that negative charge by itself can fully explain how a cell maintains its voltage. We don't need these pumps happening, anything. We don't need this other idea of pH. We need to know that this easy water is everywhere inside of the cell, because a cell is a very full thing, right? It's a very full, cells are very full, meaning there's lots of stuff inside of them. So easy water can very easily form all over the cell, and that cell can maintain its voltage. When that cell maintains this healthy voltage, this negative charge, oxygen diffuses more easily into it. Other things are more easily come into the cell. And so that's everything. It has to do with this exclusion zone water. And so the way that this water interacts with light is that this light, certain wavelengths of light can actually charge this water up even more. And so I will summarize it, and you can ask questions, but I'll summarize it now to say that this water really is everything. It maintains a massive amount of cellular charge that the cell utilizes to do work. This voltage is what the cell draws upon to do its own work. And when it's depleted, a cell loses its ability to work. It loses its ability to run all of its programs. And a cell that loses its ability to run all of its programs becomes dysfunctional, chaotic, inflammatory. Eventually, if enough of these are found in a tissue, we express disease symptoms and we get a diagnosis. But
cancer,
exclusion zone water, exactly. Right. That's like the ultimate, right?
So the water is actually the battery. The water is like what has this charge that the cells run on. It's not the ATP. The ATP does serve a function, though. What is the actual function?
So the ATP binds to proteins. So we have to view our body as a kind of like electrical, like flowing electricity. Mm-hmm. And that's how biochemical reactions take place. It's like you have these molecules that are lined up, or these proteins that are lined up in a way, because all chemical reactions is exchanges of things like electrons, right?
Energy exchange.
Right. Yeah. Energy exchange. And so what ATP does is it binds onto proteins to put them in their best configuration for electron flow. Mm-hmm. If these proteins are not in the right configuration, electron flow is going to be impeded. And so that creates dysfunction in the protein. If ATP can unfold the protein, all of a sudden the electrons can flow through in a very nice way.
Part of the folding and unfolding. Okay.
Exactly. And so ATP is essential just not for what we thought.
So light charges our water battery, and we don't get
Mhm.
much of that on our skin usually. So that's a big
Correct.
problem.
And we don't get
non-native,
any indoors, right? We're missing
right?
that, right?
Non-native EMFs muck up your water battery,
Correct.
right? And so let's link this to the spiritual, because now we're running out of time and I'm getting nervous. As far as the ether goes, how are we going to get our downloads? How are we going to sense our environment? How are we going to connect with other people and feel good and love and da 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 da? And then we start to get the breakdown of the humanity, is how I see it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you
It's a
make a
big
good
segue.
point. Well, no, it's a great segue because we're only given so many senses, but
Yeah.
our environment is full of information. Like I mean, can I smell some stuff? Can I see some things? Can I touch some things, taste it? Yes, I can. But guess what? There is so much invisible information all around me, and actually that penetrates through me and also occupies the very depths of every atom of my body. We can call it different things. Sometimes we'll call it radio waves. Sometimes it'll be called Wi-Fi radiation. It might be a cell phone signal. It might be, you can call it also the Akashic record, divine consciousness, God energy. I mean, there's so many, the ether is what I call it most often. So this energy is here. It's around me. It's in me. It's a part of me, but it needs a way to interface with my human body and for my body to be able to like kind of translate what's going on in this invisible space. And the way that that happens is through this water in my body, because as the water structures itself into a liquid crystalline state, liquid crystals are antenna. I mean, they've been utilized like that in, you know, physics
Computers.
research, computers, exactly,
Mhm.
data storage for a long time. And so this water is actually a very broadband antenna, meaning it can pick up on literally every frequency around me. And then my body the water has the ability not only to receive, but it can interpret, transduce a signal, and then transmit it all throughout the rest of my body. And so that is why what is invisible around me matters, specifically like we talk about non-native EMFs, because that my water network of my body is picking that up and they're like threat. And so my mitochondria are going to get a little wonky. My nervous system might get a little wonky. There's a lot of things. I mean, maybe a lot too, right? We do have electro hypersensitivity where things can really get thrown off from that. The other thing though, too, water then this water antenna ties into why things like my thoughts matter, why my emotions matter, why it's better for me to surround myself with laughter and people I love, as opposed to, that coworker who's always gossiping about someone. It's why I have chosen personally to pay attention to all news sources way less. And because of how that water is always interpreting these frequencies, whether it's sound, vibration, that water is always picking up on it. And that can either bring my body into a state of what's called coherence, or it could bring my body into a state of chaos. I do not want to be in a state of chaos. I want my body to think that it's healthy, it's safe, it's supported, and I want it to know how to utilize the energy in my environment to self-organize. We're designed to self-organize. We are not drifting into entropy, right? Chaos. I think that's another misnomer we hear a lot in kind of the physics space is, oh gosh, the body is just going to drift into decay and chaos. It's a natural thing that happens. That's not what happens in the body. We are neg-entropic, or we are self-organizing beings, but we do so much better with that self-organization in terms of our health, our mental health, our ability to thrive when we're in a state of coherence. And I'm doing this because we have this field of flow around us called our biofield that feeds into us. And if we can organize that flow, and if that information that's in this energy field can be very coherent, so are we. And so we're always brought back to a state of health and thriving. Whereas if I'm putting out like chaotic thoughts or hatred, and I'm not saying you got to be la all the time, right? I get frustrated, I get angry, but I do come back to a point of, okay, let's center it back, right? And that's not a healthy state for me to be in all the time. I can express, and then I recognize I'm grateful that I was able to express that. Then I come back to this state of coherence because I know that's really where my body is able to thrive best.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, definitely. We need to let the emotions out, we can't keep them inside, but we definitely need to bring it back to coherence. And it makes me think back of the podcast we just had Dr. Hussey on, and how the heart, we didn't really talk to him about how the heart is has the biggest electromagnetic field, but that is like, I feel like that is very connected, right? To our whole field, right? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Because that heart's magnetic field, like you said, it's the largest one, way bigger than the brain. The heart itself too is a vortex in terms of how it flows energy, both how the blood kind of spirals through it. But so the blood, as it spirals through the heart chambers, it actually, let me preface this. A vortex is a way of gathering information and organizing it, because a vortex is a self-organizing form. And so the blood vortex is in the chambers of our heart, and it's pulling in frequency information to distribute it throughout the rest of the body via the blood, the transportation via the blood. So that's one thing about, yeah, well, I don't need to be in a state of anger at my coworker all the time, because even though she frustrates me, I'm going to let that go, because of the fact that I know that my body is literally distributing that information all throughout. The other thing too is that, energetically speaking, here you go, Heather, energetically speaking, the ether does also vortex in to the heart. The heart implodes ether in a way that's very self-organizing, and we have the ability of our body to implode, and we can only perfectly implode like love, joy, gratitude. It's called constructive interference, or interference that builds on each other. Whereas if we try to implode energies with that are always frustration or hatred or fear, that they cancel each other out. We don't get this beautiful vortex flow coming in. And so that's also why emotions matter, how we interact with the world, interface with other people, our own thoughts, our own emotions. It's why it matters, because we are literally organizing this ether. And lastly, about the ether into our hearts, lastly about this is that there is more energy in this empty space around us than we could ever generate on our own. And we are pulling it into our bodies. We are all the time. But my thought is, why don't we make sure we're pulling it in this organized vortex, this very coherent vortex that is imploding upon itself in a very beautiful way to provide that energy, that heart centering energy. There's also a reason why the heart was the only organ that was put back in, ancient Egyptian, like mummies and tombs, right? They realized that is where the energy and the emotions and the soul, right? That was really where we interfaced with the spiritual world too. It matters. And so, gosh, I mean, I could talk so much about this, but I think a missing factor in the quantum biology world has been understanding the ether and understanding how we can influence or we can interact with it in different ways to either support a self-organizing body and coherence, or we can really take the energy that we might be getting from the sun, or we might be getting from the earth, and not utilize it in an organized, coherent fashion, and not provide the results or the health or the vitality that we're seeking.
Like there's a missing piece there. There's not a full fluid circle, right? We need to make sure we're doing all of this. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's a full holistic
Incredible.
health picture, and to do all the things, right? So yeah, that's pretty interesting, Carrie. It's interesting stuff. I enjoyed it.
It's fun. Yeah, I like learning about this stuff and sharing it. So
I'm waiting for your course on the
Yeah.
ether. Very
Yes,
patiently.
it's coming. It'll be
Okay,
coming.
thank you. We need more ether, Carrie. Thank you so much. This has been mind-blowing, amazing. As
Yes.
per usual, you always deliver the most fascinating, solid, and nourishing information. I'm just so grateful to have you in my life. I can't even say.
Oh, thank you to both of you. I'm so grateful for this conversation. Thank you for inviting me and letting me nerd out with you too. It's so great to nerd out with two people who've also, are deep into this quantum biology stuff as well. So thank you. I'm so grateful. And I don't know, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.